All right, so good morning, good day. My name is Oriana Ides. I'm incredibly grateful to be in this space with you today for our fifth and final session of Aging Out or Growing Together, how we might maximize and shift the paradigms existing related to supporting the needs of transitional age young folks. And so our guiding question for this series has been, how might our organizational values, our program design, implementation strategies, and long-term vision for young adults expand to most effectively build collaborative and responsive networks of support? Yeah, in my work, we're closing up a year, right? And we're beginning to think about the next year. And so that is a theme, right? Is of reflection and of anticipation and of hope. So our fourth session was an incredibly powerful one, I believe. It was quite invigorating to be a part of that conversation. And if you were there for it, or if you heard the recording, I invite you to share a reaction or drop it in the chat. We're surfacing these 5 gems from that session. So we had folks speaking to what client resistance and reluctance to engage in programming has looked like for them and how they navigate that. And as folks were sharing their experiences in navigating reluctance or resistance, these gems surfaced. Right? Folks talked about how important it was to engage in your own personal healing and introspection, right? Inviting young folks to trust or to let down their guard or engage in a healing journey could be even irresponsible if you're not engaging in that work yourself. So that was a really loud theme that surfaced in our last session. Folks spoke to how important it was to create constant multiple entry points and modalities for communication, for interaction, for relationship building, for expression, for goal setting. And how important it was that we're tapping into young folks' existing knowledge, to their lived experience, to their prior frames of reference, and meeting them where they're at in that regard. And then only through meeting them where they're at can we support the growth and healing as defined by them, right? To spaces beyond. That reluctance and resistance, was a way of our clients asserting boundary, and how important it is, though often uncomfortable, that they are able to assert autonomy and boundary and have a sense of control in their lives. So it could present as resistance, but it was some sort of healing in taking place for our young folks when they're able to assert that boundary, and that they were also sharing how important it is that we leverage the values, the culture, the goals, the relationships that are most relevant to our young folks, even if we don't understand it. Right? How are we creating spaces for them to surface what is important to them, and then meeting them again where they're at in that regard? So those were the gems that surfaced from our conversation last session, and wanted to invite space for you to share how you've seen these principles show up in your own practice. Right? How are you making effort to engage in these gems? Or where have you seen a young person really light up or engage in more deep and meaningful ways when you have implemented or engaged with some of these principles? We started this session with Tupac's "A Rose That Grew from Concrete."
The rose that grew from concrete. Did you hear about the rose that grew from a crack in the concrete, proving nature's laws wrong as it learned to walk without having feet? Funny it seems, but by keeping its dreams, it learned to breathe fresh air. Long live the rose that grew from concrete when no one else even cared.
I'm going to invite each person to share one by one of who they are, their journey to the work, to this moment, and something they have learned about the unique experience of transitional age young folks. And that could be from their own lived experience as a young person.
I'm Marinez. You can call me Nez. And if you cannot pronounce Marinez, Nez is fine. Chicana, born and raised in San Francisco, California, in the Mission District. Specifically, I say that with pride because I love where I come from. I come from immigrant parents. Both my parents were born in Mexico and came to the United States sometime in the early 70s, maybe mid 70s. So I'm connected to my roots in a lot of ways. I started working in the nonprofit world in San Francisco. I started off as a youth worker, actually, working for a program called MAEP, which was Mayor's Youth Education and Employment Program. And it was specifically to employ youth and get them ready for the real work world, right? That was in '94. Shortly after that, I think when I turned 18, I started, I really set foot into the nonprofit world, like for real, as an adult worker, which felt a little different because I'm actually a product of nonprofit communities or nonprofit organizations in my community. I was a participant of many programs. And one of them was actually a youth program that really stands out for me because it gave youth a voice, and it gave us an opportunity to show the world that, I guess, thinking in my young mind back then, that we weren't just kids, that we knew what time it was and we can fight the fight. And that was a program that came out of Coleman Advocates, and it was called YMAC. And it stands for, because it's still up and running, Youth Making a Change. And it was kind of like it pretty much provided like the first platform for me to, speak on some of the issues that the youth were facing and beyond, not just for youth, but beyond. That was kind of like the start. I continued into the nonprofit world, always providing direct services. I've worked with juvenile probation. I've worked with, with the mental health organization, Instituto Familiar de la Raza, which for me has been a true blessing because they basically introduced me to the world of like accepting that mental health, it's okay to say you're struggling. And with mental health, it's okay to say you're stressed out. It's okay to say you're burnt out. I think they taught me that. Because working in the nonprofit world, you get burnt out if you're not careful. So that's been my journey. I feel like I have always kind of geared towards, nonprofits that provide services specifically for youth of color, because that's where my experience is and that's where I feel like I can give my best. And yeah, so I now I'm with Five Keys. I love working with Five Keys. It's 5 key schools and programs. I have kind of dabbled in both the educational side as well as the program side, but my calling is in the program side. So recently I kind of went back to the program side, and I am soon to start facilitating cognitive behavior interventions for the formerly incarcerated, as well as I'm going to be facilitating groups in custody, Forte, and I will be focusing on anxiety, reducing anxiety and getting them ready for when they're released, and to deal with a world that may not look, feel, smell the same, as when they were in. A lot of folks went in at an early age. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
So my name is John Torres. I'm the Associate Director at Youth Alive, which is an Oakland-based nonprofit organization. I've been in the field of violence prevention intervention work for about 25, maybe a little bit more years. So I know I'm dating myself. My Tay days have been long gone, but I love Tay. I love everybody actually. And so my similar to what Marinez, mentioned, I was also born and raised in the Mission District. And at the time when I grew up, it was very Latino centric. And so there was a lot of issues growing up. And it was my experience as a youth that led me, I think, to starting my career in the nonprofit world as well. I, my parents were immigrants from Nicaragua. And so, there was a similar, kind of experience of trying to seek a better life, but then not knowing, all the resources and all the things in San Francisco or in this country. So there was, barriers. They were hardworking folks. And so again, it was an experience I think that many immigrants resonate with. I started, like I said, my career in San Francisco, doing a lot of nonprofit work as well in the gang prevention field, gang intervention world. I was fortunate enough, I believe it was during those same 10 years, might have been in 94 when I first met Marinez as well. And you'll hear some other thoughts that I'll have later on about building relationships, but I focus just a little bit on her, man, she talked about the program she was in. She was a badass young lady causing havoc. But, the relationship, and that's again, like what I may go deeper in afterwards. A lot of work, I think, with Tay, for me, is focused on relationship that goes beyond any contract, any deliverable, any fiscal year. It's really building relationships. And, as I mentioned with Nez, we have a longstanding relationship. So love her to death. She's the godmother of my son. So, that's how it goes. That's how it gets down when you're, I think in my estimation, really getting down with this work, right? The current work in Oakland, as I mentioned, Youth Alive, we do a lot of work through our organization. We have an after-school violence prevention program at 3 of the high schools. We operate a homicide response program, which provides intensive supportive services to the families of homicide victims. We run the first hospital-based violence intervention program in the country. So this provides intensive support services to individuals who've been injured by gunshot, stabbing, or physical assaults. We also have a similar case management program or support management program for referrals that come through schools and probation as well. We have a violence interrupter team, which is a team of credible messengers from throughout Oakland who their aim is to mediate conflicts after an incident of violence. There are some proactive activity they do as well, but primarily it's them trying to stop retaliation, have an impact there. We have a relocation program that focuses on individuals in imminent danger who may be the targets of some of the violence, on trying to find ways to get them out of the area so that they, continue to live and can thrive. And the last couple of things we do is we provide counseling services. We have 3 mental health professionals. So we work with a wide variety of age range, beginning with 12, sometimes upwards of 50 or so. It all depends on the clients that we receive. In that program, we have 3, I think I may have mentioned, 3 full-time mental health professionals. And one thing that I didn't introduce, most of these programs, I support and oversee them. So the added piece to the counseling services is, if I didn't think that was already enough hats I was wearing, last year I became a licensed marriage and family therapist. So I also do provide direct counseling services to the clients that we see. And the last piece that we do is advocacy. And we do that at the local, state, and federal levels, aiming to increase resources and move the needle on some legislation that provides supports to survivors of violence. Oftentimes, Tay is a big, kind of carve out of that age range in there. And so, yeah, so I've had a long journey there. That's where I'm at now.
Right. Peace and blessings, everyone. My name is Rudy. God is good, everyone. I feel like, my past and everything that we're describing on here about the Tay issues, the misunderstood, the overlooked, the underserved people, that is me, right? I am the rose from the concrete. I really feel as though I'm the rose from the third world country, right? And so me growing up in San Francisco, right? I grew up in the South of Market Tenderloin area. You had to grow up fast. You have to know how to survive and get by a lot of landmines in order for you to survive in a neighborhood where it was over 120-year histories of Filipinos, but everybody else, right? And this neighborhood here, even before they started talking about gentrification and displacement, our neighborhood was one of the first ones, in addition to Fillmore in San Francisco. So the district that I live in San Francisco, South of Market, right? It was a lot of gang activity, a lot of drug use, a lot of homelessness, the mentally, everything that you see now is the same thing that's going on, but just intensified, right? And so as a young kid growing up in that, I never seen myself doing the work that I'm doing now, because I was somebody who destroyed the neighborhood that I was in, coming up and thinking that was just the way things were, right? A product of your environment. Selling dope, running with the wrong people, going to juvenile hall, right? Going to getting stabbed, shot, right? Going to jail. And so 1988, I caught my first case as an adult, right? Drug case, because that's when crack cocaine was in. And everybody then was selling dope. But see, prior to that, we had a youth center in our neighborhood called Candy Kip that we grew up in, that they had all the kids go to. It was a community center, not a rec center, which is a difference. And so this community center provided us with all the basic, essential, fundamental things that we needed to be successful in life. But they shut that down. So most of us ended up getting on the streets. And when we did, that crack area hit, right? A lot of us got busted. So from 88 all the way to 94, I was in and out of jail. In 1994, I had an opportunity to go to City College. And there was a dude there named Dennis Ubongan, who used to be at that program, Candy Kip, who saw us when we was little. And he said, hey, man, I can get you in this college. It's a second chance program called the EOPS program, right? Extended Opportunity Program Services, that would help out cats who was getting out the joint. And I said, shit, oh, excuse my language. I said, you know what? I might as well take advantage of this because I don't want to go back to jail. So he had got me in the program, and my job there, in addition to going to school, was to help guys and girls who were like me. This is 1994. So I'm like, I started liking doing that, helping out other people, right? I was still selling dope. I was still Dr. Jekyll in the morning, Miss Rob Your Butt at night still, because, you know, I was walking the fence, right? And so the EOPS, not only did provide us with all the things we needed at school, they also said, look, you got a part-time job. Do you want a full-time job? I said, yeah. So I saw this job placement in one of the buildings. It was the Science Hall. It said gang prevention counselor, Filipino. And I said, yeah, that's me. Filipino and I gang bang. Straight up, true story. 415-206-2140. You remember that number, Oriana? It's Bernal Heights Neighborhood Center. Extension 139. Mauricio Vela. He called me in. He said, hey, man, have you ever been locked up? I said, here goes that question again. So I told the truth. I said, yes. You know how to speak Filipino? I lied. I said, yes. You're hired. 1994. He said, now I need you to go find all the gang members in that neighborhood. And Bernal Heights is in District 11. Well, I live in District 6, South of Market. So I knew where, I'm from Frisco, right? Represent. I'm from Frisco. I knew all the Filipino gang members at Balboa High School. So I went up to Balboa High School, right? got on the 14 mission, got off on there in Onondaga, went over there, and sure enough, they was all out there. Balboa High School was probably one of the most notorious schools in 1994 in San Francisco. A big gangs feud happening between Blacks, Filipinos, Latinos, and Samoans. I was able to navigate the Filipinos to come to the table. I had some of my homeboys get the Blacks, the Latinos, and the Samoan. We sat at the table and they said, I said, what y'all want to do to end the violence at the school? Because most people don't want war, right? They really want peace. And so the kids who was in the fight, who actually was robbing and beating up and damn near killing each other, came up with all the solutions to stop the violence. So I said, okay, so the police wasn't in the room, the administration wasn't in the room, it was just me and all the youngsters from the turf. And we said, okay, so what do y'all want? They said simple things, sports activities, talent shows, opportunities. I said, cool, I could provide them, but I need your help. I need y'all to help me organize this. Just like we would do in any war inside any institution, you would bring the people together to communicate. And so it worked. And they started saying, well, we need to name this club an organization. All right, I gave the power to the people. In 1994 in Frisco, y'all remember the Get Low Players, P-L-A-Y-A-Z. You remember 14, the Players Club, P-L-A-Y-A-Z. So we put United up there. We all united together, Black and brown, natural born allies. And then we, boom, put the players on it. October the 8th, 1994, United Players. Fast forward 29 years later, our organization is worldwide. We got chapters in New York and the Bronx. I got chapters in the Philippines. I just started a chapter in Africa, in Kenya, in Nairobi, right? We got them all in Hawaii. So if y'all want to go to Hawaii, get at me. I got a hookup out there. You understand me? I'll be out there next week. And so you talk about that misunderstood, overlooked, and underserved population. That's who I deal with. Our organization now, I left Burnham in 2005, right, Oriana? And I came back to my neighborhood and started what we started in District 11 because it was needed in my neighborhood. And so my motto is, y'all know what it is. It takes the hood to save the hood. It takes us. It takes our people. We can't depend on nobody, right? And so when we talk about this TAPE population that we're dealing with, these are our leaders, our current, present leaders. They're not the future, they right now. But it's similar to what happened back in 94. They're misunderstood, they're overlooked and underserved. And so from the elementaries to the penitentiaries, that's who I serve and what we do. We get them while they're young, before they get to that TAPE population, right? And so United Players is a nonprofit organization that I got in my neighborhood in District 6 now, where we were fortunate enough to purchase buildings that we're in. We stabilized them. I told you from the beginning, we was getting gentrified and misplaced. We got a 120-year history of Filipinos here. We ain't going nowhere. I'm gonna make sure. When I was young, I used to play Monopoly, right? And I was good at it. And so this is what we doing. We buying the land. We ain't being pushed out, right? We holding people accountable. We making sure we got our blocks and our buildings named after our Filipino people who they never acknowledged, right? Not to take away from no Blacks or no Latinos, but what about my Filipino people, right? They started only knowing Filipinos until they found Pacquiao. But we've been here, you understand me? When I went to Africa, man, they was calling Mazunga. I said, what the hell is Mazunga? You're the white man. I said, no, I'm not white. I'm Filipino. They said, no, you Jackie Chan. No, I ain't Jackie Chan. I'm Filipino. And so by the time I left 2 weeks later, they said, no, Filipino, you're the black man. Because the black and brown, we natural born allies.
Thank you, Rudy. Thank you, Nez. Thank you, John, for, going through the last 25 plus years of your life to share, the values, the experiences, the the aspirations that brought you to this moment here. Nez, you both spoke to giving young folks power to be their own solution, to identify the issues that are most affecting them, and giving them the space and the power to generate the solutions without authority, without the current structures. Like, how can they tap into radical imagination and deep knowing to create their own solutions? And I just wanted to give a bit of space. How might someone within an organization, how might a case manager or a program director or an educator begin to do that with their young folks? How do we responsibly hand over power and give space to young people to generate the solutions to their problems, to the issues facing them?
I would say a good start would be with history, the accomplishments, learn about, get in tune with that. Folks are in tune with, we can be in tune with our neighborhoods and with our community and with our workplace, but going even a little deeper than that, I think gives you a deeper understanding as to, like, because as people of color, we tend to think, I know for me, this is true, and many around me, we don't think privilege when we think of, people. We don't think like we're privileged, but we're very privileged in a lot of ways. Culturally, there's so much that folks can learn that would help you kind of figure out, like, why we are where we are, given history, right? But it doesn't mean we have to be there. We don't have to stay there. We don't have to live there. We're there, but we don't have to live there. So I think that's something that lacks. There's a lot of that lacks in a lot of communities, is that simple education and knowledge and sharing and passing that down.
Education and knowledge of self is key, right? And historically, right, growing up in the inner city, especially, the schools we go to, they don't ever teach us about and strengthen and educate us on who we are, right? I never graduated from high school. I got kicked out of mission when I was in the 12th grade because I used to challenge the teacher a lot. I used to always say, this thick history book you given, where is the Filipino people in here? And he was showing me it was only like 2 lines. And I would say, all right, there's got to be more up in here. And he was like, no, that's all that's in here. And I would say, well, who wrote the book? And he would tell me. I said, well, who's that dude? And he would say to me, why are you always challenging? I said, because I really want to know. He said, you're a troublemaker. I said, no, I'm not a troublemaker. I just want to know. Go to the office. So instead of going to office, I go to Dolores Park. And I hang across the street, and guess who will be there? All the thugs of everybody else who really wanted to learn and know. It's important for you to learn how to read, write, and do arithmetic at a proper level. That's important. But we still have to empower and know who we are, right? And that's why when they say OG, they say original gangster. No, it's original guidance. It's for us to get information so we could pass down and educate our people. And so I just wanted to say, for us in my neighborhood where I'm at, we're in the schools now, right? I got around 25 staff. We are making sure that we're in the elementary schools, that we're in the neighborhood, we're in the middle schools. And we would only want to teach these kids how to read, write, and do math. We want to teach them about their education and who they are. Knowledge of self is so crucial. They say if you don't know who you are, you don't know where you're going. That's a big fact. And so it took me to be incarcerated to hang around lifers for them to tell me, you can't hang with Black people. You in here, you and other. And so these Filipinos would tell me, what you know about being Filipino? I'm like, I don't know, what I was taught. And not to take away from my family, because my mom and dad used to try to teach me, but I would be embarrassed because when I go outside, it wasn't none of that out there. You dig what I'm saying? And so anyway, we teach these kids at a young age, and we teach them to love themselves, and then give them the opportunity with jobs to work with us to serve the community. So a lot of my staff are people who actually were participants, and they grew up, and now they're adults and they have babies, and their babies is in our programs. So when it takes a hood to say the hood, that's for real for me.
First, I'd say, hey, Rudy, you were a troublemaker for the folks that just want to keep things the way things are. So, kudos to you, obviously pushing that angle. I agree with both folks about history, about education. I think that one thing that was coming up for me, and it's similar to how Rudy was saying, there's positions and you bring people, folks that were part of your programs, and you know what I'm saying? Like, they add more to it. In our organization, I'm fortunate, I've only been around, the organization's been around over 30 years. There were people in the initial after-school violence intervention program that started in 1989, and they are now on our board of directors. So to span that, to have staff that reflect, that have gone through our programs, I think is very important. And so I guess the thing I'd add is carving out those spaces. Currently, like I said, there's some folks that have landed in our board of directors spots, but we also have on our board of directors 2 youth slots that are high school young folks. They'll rotate on a yearly basis. It's another senior and another junior, but it's them having really a say in giving feedback to our board of directors that influences our programs. It's really valued that way to incorporate them. So it's carving out that seat for them, and that's one way, I know that we've attempted to, and I think others can do so as well if they have that will to make those changes.
Thank you. I've seen a lot of organizations hand over positions of leadership to young folks without the right scaffolding support. This next question is in regards to understanding a young person's holistic or full self, right? There's the experiences they may be having with community violence or incarceration. There's their emotional landscape. There's their family dynamics. There's so many realms to the human experience. And so this next question is like, how is your organization thinking about a young person holistically? And what does interaction in that regard look like for you? Or what might it look like for you?
A holistic approach starts with the participant, that TAY youth. And I mentioned we work with individuals from like 12 to like 50. There's a learning lesson later on if we get to that question. I don't think we have TAY specific programming at our agency, but a good vast portion of who we serve is in that age range. So what I'm saying, here applies to all. And so I said it's starting with the participant. It's building the relationship, and I brought that up with Nez earlier and the relationship we share. It's really getting to know somebody, not non-judgmentally, whatever. Is it a badass person? Great. What makes you that? What are the strengths? What are we pulling from that can be a positive outlook into it? What can that inspire to be to someone's benefit and further them along, and just kind of change that focus? I feel when we're working again from this holistic approach, we have to, people talked about the history of people's families. Oftentimes, I know there's youth or individuals that'll come in crisis. So I know we're trying to stabilize, we're trying to do all these things. If you can imagine somebody after a gunshot, again, we're trying to stabilize certain aspects of their life at the time. But what I've always tried to understand for anybody I'm working with, what's your desires? What's your dreams? Let's not just keep you stuck in patching you up to where you were before you came in, but where can we take you there? Where's your next level? Where are you going? How can we dream a little bit? How can we push it into, that space? So, again, for me, it does get complex at times. There's lots of situations that folks are dealing with. Sometimes they may not have a supportive family network, how others have had. And so we play a larger role as the service provider. We may be that big brother that they never had, right? And be able to, get on their line about, things. But, if we're really trying to build a relationship to understand all aspects of them, it helps us go at their pace too. We get to know, all right, we can push you on this one. And definitely there's times where it's like, come on, brah, you can do more. And oftentimes it'll be like, all right, you're right. So by understanding again, a person holistically and taking the time to build that relationship, that helps us, I think, and then working with individuals. So that's at least a starting point.
The work around dreams, right? I've sat with young people before that have really struggled to connect to their dreams, to even imagine a dream or a hope for the future. And they could speak at, exhaustion around their fears, but to really be able to connect with a dream or a hope that they have that has been hard to connect to. So I posed a question in the chat for anyone. How do you support the space-pace relationship that allows young folks to dream and are
Let me add one last thing on that around dreams. It's
Yeah.
I picked this up from an elder counselor as well. So I do not take any credit. If he's out there, if he's listening, anybody knows him, Samuelin Martinez was a great individual and dropped a lot of knowledge. And one thing, in this counseling realm, one his gems, so we could maybe add his gem into this, but he taught me a way that he worked with individuals, and that was it was a book analogy that he said, right? And so what it was in how it relates to dreams and stuff, in this moment, right? When I begin working with somebody, that's one chapter of their life, right? But let's sit back, and the dreaming part would be, where does this book end? Where do you see that final chapter? And what it would do, what it would allow many times is that we could think back at the moment we are in time right now. But like I would pose the question, if you see yourself, with a family, owning a home, whatever the dream was, right? You can go back and say, oh, that chapter in my life, oh yeah, I remember it. Yeah, I was struggling at that time, but guess what? I landed over here. And it would really inspire folks to, many young folks were like, oh yeah, and some of the hardest situations, I've worked with individuals after gunshot injuries that were paraplegic, that, totally turned over their lives into a different space. But being able to say, like, all right, let's dream a little bit over here. Where does the book end though for you? And then, we could talk about all the chapters in between, how to get there. And you could see some of the weight lifted sometimes, on being able to just take that moment to do so.
I'm at halftime in my life, and I still don't know nothing. You imagine somebody 18 years old who's coming up and people expect them to know everything, right? They still babies. And I know in San Francisco, they say 18 to 25 is transitional age youth, right? At 18, you still don't have all the skills that you have. And I think, like we was talking about Tupac earlier, Tupac was been saying that all along, right? That young kids that age need to get all these skills, not only just all the stuff that I mentioned, but you need therapy, you need mental health. There's so much trauma and so much therapeutic stuff that kids at 18, even younger, especially growing up in the inner cities, in the hood, and seeing all the stuff that you see and you experience and you think is normal, and you wonder why everybody getting high, or they committing suicide, or they using dope. At that age, it's important, man, for them to build life skills. It's important for them to get financial literacy. It's important for them to teach them about all the real things in life that they need to know when they get into this real world. Because at 18, right, the American way is, you 18, you an adult now. You got to get out the house and you got to go fend for yourself. You just learning. I didn't start learning till I was in the 13th grade, and I was being locked up. You know what I mean? And so to me, the way we approach it holistically is like the kids who we have in our organization who is working for us, or even in our program, we start teaching them young and educating them with all the skills that they need through life skills, provide them therapy, provide them mental health, give their family support, all the trust-based relational intervention things that you need. So when you get that age, you somewhat adultish and you grown up. What they say, by 18, you gotta have a house, you gotta have a car, right? Nah, man. That ain't reality. That ain't my world. Especially for a lot of us who's Black, brown, or poor, right? And so it's important for us who has this knowledge and this wisdom, because the schools ain't gonna teach them that, right? So we have to be the ones who educate them and know that. And like I said, I'm at halftime of my life. I'm still learning, right? So I imagine somebody that age that we should give it to them in a way where they can comprehend. So how does that happen? We get them a young person their age, who they can relate to, and somebody who's been there, done that, who done walked the hot rocks of Baghdad barefoot, in the OG, who could be in their life as mentors, and somebody who can give, where they can really relate, you know what I mean? And know what they saying, and when they talk to them, that they feel them. That's a holistic approach for me. And give them a job, give them a career, not just a job. Give them the housing, give them the career, education, the things that are basic essentials, that fundamental we need in life to get by.
Beautiful. I haven't seen that so much. The peer mentorship paired with like the elder wisdom together, right? We need both.
You know how music is these days? If you listen to music, what's new is old and what's old is new. Because if you hear music now, everybody recycled it. It's all recycled stuff. And some people who are young think that they're hearing new music, but you know that's been an old song from back in the days.
Nez, do you have anything to add to the conversation around dreaming and like what conditions or space, or how do you develop the relationship?
It is about building relationships. It's also about being willing to open up. You can't expect to, engage anybody, whether it's a child, whether it's an adult, if you're not willing. You want to ask them questions and you want to learn about them and you want to figure out how you can help them, right? Well, on the same, on the same level, you have to be willing to give a little bit of yourself, talk a little bit about your experience. You don't have to give them your social security number. You don't have to open up a bank account for them, but you have to be willing to share some of your experiences. And, if it's relevant, obviously, we don't want to go into like things that are not, if it's within, that conversation, if within along the lines, but we ask that these youth open up to us so that we can help them, but we don't open up to them to show them how we can help. How can I help you? Well, I can help you because I have similar experiences and I have navigated, a similar situation, or I know someone, or I have helped someone in the past, navigate a certain situation. But, just speaking to what they were saying, like in terms of, and then this maybe John said this in our check-in, the day prior to this meeting, but one of you mentioned the whole, society, no matter what, state you're coming from, because it all sounds about the same everywhere, right? Or similar. But you mentioned, I think it was you, John, who mentioned that society has these expectations of specifically Tay youth, right? Because you're not young enough to fall, in this category, but you're not old enough to fall into this category either, and you don't fall in certain categories because of your age, and what society considers to be an adult, but they don't provide the resources. The resources are not available. They don't match. I think that's what it was that you said, they don't match. So you have these expectations, like you give them all these things to run with. And I deal with, folks who are about to be released. So again, that's a whole nother mindset right there. You're coming from an institutionalized, frame of thinking, because regardless of how long you've been in there. So again, I think that really resonated with me, and it's so true. You can't have these expectations and then only provide, the very bare minimal resources. So that's something that for me, obviously it gets me worked up because it's a reality that it wasn't my reality in the 90s. That's not what it was for me. That's not what it was. So having to really, grasp that concept for me has been a challenge, and a challenge to, to help folks in those situations that are looking for housing. How? What housing?
Right.
What housing? I can help you get into housing, but you got to make 3 times, the rent. You have to, who makes that? So it's one of those, yeah, it's a tough one.
Right. In the Bay Area, you're living, in the poverty in poverty, if you're making under 120,000, right? And so you think like that's stated, that's clear fact. And so, yeah, it is incredibly terrifying for young folks. I do want to just elevate what I hear, that the expectations placed upon Tay youth don't necessarily match their developmental stage or the resources provided them. And then the consequences are grave, right? Like, so all of that together, the punishment, the consequences are incredibly harsh and severe. And so how do we make that line up,
I just wanted to add really quick also that something that the organization is doing that I really love is that they're starting to focus more on Tay youth, because again, like John said, they're realizing that this is the population that we serve, like the greater numbers are in that, in Tay. And so obviously there's more need for services in that area. And I think that I'm going into custody at San Bruno County Jail to provide art. I'm going to be doing art with inmates, and the art is going to be focused on how to deal with anxiety. Well, recognize what anxiety is, what it might look like for you, what it might feel like for you, and some of the ways that they can minimize their anxiety, so that when they're released, they're not coming into this world like confused and like in a chaotic state of mind. Like confusion will lead to like bad choices. It'll lead to like all these other things that if you don't take care of that. So that's something that I will say that we're really starting to focus more on, and it looks and feels great. Let me just say.
Could I just say this though? And I
Yes.
appreciate, right, the good news is that they're really taking this more serious now about this Tay population, because Marinez is right. It's good that we have people like her and other people inside these institutions and these jailhouses that's providing the resources they need, right? And so my son, he's 25 years old now, right? He just got out of federal prison. And at that age, him and his homeboys, man, I say out of 10 of them, 5 of them is in prison. Most of them caught life sentences, murder beefs. And I was hoping, man, within those times from 18 to 25, that most of these dudes would figure out and get it. And sometimes it takes you to get arrested for you to get rescued. And that's where Marinez is at now. They're able to get some of these dudes who's in there who will be able to get out with those skills. But then we got that unfortunate piece where you have guys who are like my nephew and them, who they in there for murder now. They got 50 to life, who will probably come out way when they're older, right? And then you have that population who didn't make it, who they ended up, getting killed. And so we have to catch the ones who are in between at the time and try to get them while they're younger. But it's good news that they have these programs like 5 Keys and all that, man, in these jailhouses. Because when I was locked up, they didn't have no programs.
Thank you. Yeah, my son just turned 25 2 weeks ago, and he honestly didn't believe that he would make it. He, as he blew out his candles, I'm so grateful that he's here and in this moment thriving, but he honestly did not believe in his heart that he would see this birthday. And it's incredible to see how the conditions our young folks are wading through show up on their psychological and emotional wellness. And then they're responding as humans do, right, to their environment. And it's so much. It's so much. We have 10 minutes left in this conversation. I'm going to drop into the chat the last question, but maybe we can also come back to slides, and we'll see the questions that our panelists responded to, and open the floor up to everyone to respond. So where do you see your organization most needing to grow in terms of serving the holistic needs of Tay youth?
I would just say this though. I'm a self-sufficient type of person. I don't want to depend on nobody giving us no money for us to know what we need to do, because we are the real experts and professors in this, because we live this, right? This is my life. I told you, I walk the high rocks of Baghdad barefoot, and I am the rose from the concrete. So I know and believe what needs to be done, but they just got to make sure when we get the money, that the money is given to the right organizations and to the right people to get to do what they got to do. Oftentimes there's a lot of being money allocated to organizations. They scared to even deal with these kids, these young men and young women. You got people who's giving money to organizations who don't do nothing. They sitting on their hands. And so they need to be held accountable, right? And so I feel like continue to make sure you fund organizations that's doing the work, right? Fund people that's doing the work, and then also learn how to generate your own revenue so we don't have to depend on nobody when they're giving out that bread.
Yes, I just want to amplify what you said earlier, Rudy. You have a building in your community, brick and mortar, that young folks can come to, old folks, all folks, community can come and feel safe and build and solution find. From a lunchtime program to that is just incredible.
God is good. I told you, God is good. Not only do we have this building, it's 4,600 square feet, we were just able to purchase the building next door to ours for literacy and reentry. And so I got all the homies coming home, man, from out the prison system who did 25, 35, 45 years straight, who I know and I did time with. They're all home now. And guess what? They working with the elementary school kids. So when I say the elementaries to the penitentiaries, that's real. You don't have too often people, man, who was murderers or people who was behind bars for 187s working with little kids. They getting it raw now, y'all. Raw and uncut. They getting this real game. And guess what? You think, man, therapy is given to the kids? It's the kids is giving therapy to the adults.
Yes.
Big facts. Medicine.
Therapy is often about reclaiming what has been stolen from us, right? Through the process of socialization and life. So for the young ones, they have that wisdom still in them.
Spit your stuff though, Oriana. Spit your stuff. That's a real game. Y'all don't know me, John Marinez, and Oriana. We go back like a hot bowl of menudo for real.
I would love, me personally, to see Five Keys start to incorporate more mental health services. I think every nonprofit should have some kind of, those kinds of services incorporated into their whether it's their budget, their contracts, whatever it is, but something because it's necessary, it's helpful, and I feel like folks who deal with their mental health, whether it's just stress level, whether it's anxiety, whether it's trauma, you have such a broader opportunity to succeed and do these wonderful things that you might want to do, but for whatever reason, there's no motivation, whatever, the list is endless. But point being is, I feel like if they incorporated that for both staff and participants,
okay, The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate is that we are all traumatized to some degree. So the question isn't, have we experienced trauma? It's where do we fall on the trauma spectrum, right?
Right.
What degree do we need? And then we also know that trauma is not necessarily the experience, but it's what is happening within you as a result of the experience, and what is happening within you is a result of what's happening around you, right? And so how was your trauma met by the environment around you? How were you supported to heal? How was it the meaning making around it, right? And so when adults are in this space to guide young folks and to be there to create the container to help them find language to communicate what is happening within them as a result of their experiences, it is transformative.
Trauma, right? It's natural reactions or normal reactions to an abnormal situation, just like you said. So it ain't like, and people don't know this. Once they, that's some of the infusion of knowledge, then they can see themselves in a different light, not that they are someone that's having issues or, what society might be trying to label them as, or, put some kind of, prognosis on them. It's really like, these are normal reactions, but then it's how do you cope with it? How do you then find the tools to get you through that stuff? Just real quick, what I'll throw in, just about what I feel we need. I mentioned, we have a wide range of ages that we work with. I think what Youth Alive could do is have like a specialized, focused kind of TAY services angle to our work. And that, for me, it also means that it involves some of our advocacy to uplift the TAY voice in another way. Again, when we've done advocacy, legislative stuff at the local, state, federal level, it's about just crime survivors or violence survivors. I think, we could definitely build on those connections that we've built over the years, and then, focus some stuff around TAY voice. So those would be ways.
What appreciation do you have for the wisdom of our panelists? What do you want to amplify, carry with you into your day and into your work?